you're watching our 24 News World News program. I'm your host, Melissa Khamilat, and these are the headlines. As part of the Algerian preparation for the Arab Summit, Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune continues the series of invitations for Arab leaders for the summit. Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi says U.S. sanctions on his country must be lifted to reach a nuclear agreement. Also in our news, Ukrainian authorities find a mass grave in Izium, a recaptured city in the east, where more than 440 bodies were found. And Kyrgyzstan's border guard service says that Tajik forces once again opened fire on several of its outposts. As part of the Algerian preparation for the Arab League summit, Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune continues the series of invitations for Arab leaders for the summit. President Tebboune has lately invited his Tunisian counterpart Qais Said, as well as the Libyan Presidential Council chairman and the Jordanian king, in addition to the Bahraini king Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, to attend the Arab League summit that is going to take place in Algeria in November. In a press conference, the Algerian Minister of Foreign Affairs and Algerian Community Abroad, Abdallah Mamra, saluted the great efforts delivered by the President of the Republic and his envoys to make a successful Arab League summit, which will take place in Algeria on November 1st and 2nd.
We're a step ahead of holding the 31st Arab League summit in Algeria. And preparing for this summit, you have seen all the efforts delivered by the President of the Republic and his envoys for all the Arab leaders. As well as the success of the Civil Society Forum, which was held for the first time in the history of the Arab League.
In order to prepare for a new beginning for collective Arab action, Abdallah Mamra emphasized that a comprehensive conference of the Palestinian reunification will take place in Algeria prior to the date of the Arab Summit.
The President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, also launched a diplomatic effort to strengthen Palestinian unity and reunification. This issue will be discussed at a meeting scheduled in Algeria prior to the Arab League summit. And this step is crucial to bolstering Arab unity in the face of challenges. The summit will serve as the founding meeting of the united Arab world, which will support the preservation of the Palestinian people's unity.
Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdulrahman received on Thursday in Algiers the Attorney General of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Sheikh Saud bin Abdullah bin Mbarak. The meeting allowed both parties to highlight the excellent relations of fraternity and cooperation between Algeria and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and to review the state of prospects and bilateral cooperation in various fields, particularly in the legal and judicial field. Within the framework of the new constitution that was put to a referendum in late July and started to be implemented despite being rejected by most political forces, Tunisian President Qais Said issued a decree inviting voters for the upcoming legislative elections, as well as another decree that includes fundamental changes to the electoral law.
We're still holding to our promise, and today's discussion will center on a draft decree that has been created. The scheduled time will also be used to discuss a draft regarding inviting voters to the elections.
A world food program storage facility in the Haitian city of Qanat was set on fire after protesters ransacked it. The protesters say they want UN and international charities to restore their food sovereignty and self-determination. As the tensions grow, Haitians are now bracing for fuel price hikes after a Sunday speech by the Prime Minister Ariel Henry amid a growing scarcity of gasoline and diesel that could force some businesses to shut down. Ukrainian authorities found a mass grave in Izium, a recaptured city in the east, where more than 440 bodies were found. President Zelensky blamed Russia and Ukraine's Western allies have accused the Russian forces of perpetrating war crimes there. whereas Moscow says it didn't target civilians or commit war crimes.
Mass graves were found in Izium in the Kharkiv region. The necessary legal proceedings have already been initiated there. There should be more information, clear and verified tomorrow.
Developments in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine are still making worries for the two countries as the Ukrainian armed forces continue their counteroffensive, which has led them to be on the doorstep of the Russian border. The International Atomic Agency or Energy Agency has made a further resolution for the Russian forces to leave the Zaporizhzhia power plant as the threat is becoming more dangerous. Osama Ayadi has the details.
With their two S-7 self-propelled gun, Ukrainian soldiers of the 43rd Brigade fire on Russian positions on the front line in the southern. Ukrainian soldiers of the 43rd Brigade fire on Russian positions in the front line in southern Ukraine. This comes at a time when Ukrainian officials say they have recaptured nearly 500 square kilometers of territory from the Russians in recent weeks during the counteroffensive in the south. Russians living in areas near the Ukrainian border are voicing growing concern as Kyiv's counteroffensive around the northeastern city of Kharkiv has brought Ukrainian forces to Russia's doorstep. Local social media groups in Russia have revealed many concerns about the close threat that Ukrainian counterattack is bringing.
I'd like to find out how secure the residents of Shebekino are. As a result of the recent events, we're scared.
NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg stated that Ukraine's counterattack against Russian troops had been very effective, but warned that nations should prepare for the long haul, as this did not signal the beginning of the war that is apparently moving to a further stage.
It's of course extremely encouraging to see that Ukrainian armed forces have been able to take back territory and also strike behind Russian lines. At the same time, we need to understand that this is not the beginning of the end of the war. We need to be prepared for the long haul.
Amidst the last military tide that is growing in Ukraine, Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant remains the most critical area of the conflict. For this concern, the UN Nuclear Watchdog's 35-nation Board of Governors passed a resolution demanding that Russia has to end its occupation of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The resolution is the second on the Russia's military operation in Ukraine, passed by the International Atomic Energy Agency Board, and their content is very similar, though the first in March preceded Russian forces taking control of Zaporizhzhia, Europe's biggest nuclear power plant.
Kyrgyzstan's border guard service said on Friday that Tajik forces once again opened fire on several of its outposts, an escalation of tension after a brief confrontation earlier this week. In turn, Tajikistan accused the Kyrgyz forces of shelling one of its outposts and 7 villages with heavy weaponry. Authorities in the Tajik city of Isfara said of it, a civilian was killed and 3 injured. The delegation of the Collective Security Treaty Organization arrived at Yerevan today to lead a fact-finding mission. The mission will be led by the head of the CSTO's joint staff and will assess the current situation in certain areas of the border and prepare a detailed report. Stanislav Zas, the alliance's chief, plans to visit Armenia separately this week. Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi said U.S. sanctions on his country must be lifted to reach a nuclear agreement. Ibrahim Raisi added that there must be guarantees established to ensure the lasting removal of U.S. sanctions. The Iranian president said the removal of sanctions should be accompanied with the resolution of safeguards. There are some political and basis accusations against the Islamic Republic of Iran when it comes to safeguard issues. Leaders of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, including from India, Pakistan, Iran, and 4 Central Asian countries, have convened in the city of Samarkand in Uzbekistan, which has seen a flurry of high-level talks, including the first face-to-face meeting between Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin. Nabil Khazini reports.
At the time when the war rages in Europe, for the East it was time to meet and to reunite. Reinforced yesterday with Iran as a permanent member, it is in Samarkand, one of the oldest cities in the world, where the Shanghai Cooperation Organization leaders are meeting to discuss international and regional issues. A high-profile summit so important that the Chinese president made his first trip outside of China. How could this be otherwise during a time when the world knows a shift in power and while nations are trying to find new partners? And when the Russian president made an appearance with his Chinese counterpart, the world has seen the first physical meeting after the war in Ukraine between the two leaders directly involved in fighting a united front to counterbalance the United States and its allies.
China and Russia have maintained effective strategic communication in the face of changes in the world, times and history. China is willing to work with Russia to demonstrate the responsibility of a major country, play a leading role, and inject stability into a turbulent world.
Most importantly, the exchange of views between the leaders of the SCO states is taking place when the international order is becoming a thing from the past and during a critical time, and in an atmosphere of fast-changing geopolitics, something Vladimir Putin has made it clear.
The growing role of new power centers cooperating with each other is becoming more and more evident.
The summit was a chance to show the Russian-Chinese relations are becoming even tighter against the Western measures. Beijing has been careful to avoid violating Western sanctions or to provide direct military support to Moscow, whose dependence on China has deepened amid Western isolation.
China has registered its lowest quarterly growth since the start of the pandemic, according to data from the country's statistics bureau. The period was marked by lockdowns in Shanghai and elsewhere. Hossein Berkan has the details.
This is the panorama that Shanghai, the largest city in China, is experiencing in its third week of strict confinement due to the coronavirus outbreak that threatens the controversial zero-COVID strategy of the Asian giant. Analysts expect more disruptions from tighter COVID-19 controls in September before the ruling Communist Party's Congress that starts October 16, where President Xi Jinping is poised to break with President and secure a third leadership term.
At this stage, the international environment is still complicated, and the impact of changes in the external situation is still uncertain. The triple pressure is shrinking domestic demand, supply shock, and weakening expectations continues to emerge, and the foundation for economic recovery is still not solid.
China's government is promising tax refunds, free rent, and other aid to promote economic recovery, but most forecasters expect China to fall short of its 5.5% growth target this year. The exchange rate of China's yuan remains stable amid stronger volatility of global financial market in comparison with other major currencies, according to an analyst with the State Administration of Foreign Exchange.
Over the past year, the yuan performed much better than currencies of most developed economies and emerging markets. The exchange rate of the yuan remained basically stable, whether speaking from the supply and demand in the foreign exchange market or from the currency level and the trend.
Economists and business groups say China's trading partners will feel the impact of shipping disruptions over the following months. The slowdown reduces demand for imported oil, food, and consumer goods, and also hampers China's exports.
US President Joe Biden has called for a united front against hate crimes and political violence in a speech where he presented himself as a champion of moderate values. The summit comes just 8 weeks ahead of midterm elections in which Republicans are seeking to take control of Congress. Let's take a listen.
That's why today we're launching a new White House initiative on hate-motivated violence. We're going to use every federal resource available to help communities counter hate-fueled violence, build resilience, and foster greater national unity. Unfortunately, such hate-fueled violence and threats are not new to America. There is a through line of hate, from massacres of indigenous people to the original sin of slavery, the terror of the Klan, to anti-immigration violence against the Irish, Italians, Chinese, Mexicans. So many others lace through our history. And hold social media platforms accountable for spreading hate and fuel violence. And I'm calling on Congress to get rid of special immunity for social media companies and impose much stronger transparency requirements on all of them.
Tens of thousands of mourners are paying respects to the late Queen of the UK before her funeral on Monday. London is ready to welcome many from around the world over the coming days as the United Kingdom prepares to say goodbye to Queen Elizabeth II. More with Miriam Ziyan.
Thousands of mourners waited hours Thursday in a line that stretched for almost 8 kilometers across London to spend a few minutes filing past Queen Elizabeth II's coffin while she lies in state.
I did cry when I heard about it, and yesterday I cried when I watched them taking her on the gun carriage. And I just didn't think I'd be that emotional when it's not part of my family, but I suppose she has been part of our family, all of us, really, and that's why I have to be here. I'm compelled to be here.
People didn't mind waiting for almost 10 hours to pay respects to the UK's longest reigning monarch.
Don't know, no sensation on my knees at all or legs. But it's been fine. Most of the people have been lovely and we've had quite a nice time, really.
So we're shattered. But yeah, it's all worth it. All worth it. So yeah, I just can't wait to get in and just say my last goodbye now on home soil.
On Friday, the queue to see the late Queen lying in state was temporarily closed after reaching capacity. The Queen's death prompted an outpouring of emotion that drew tens of thousands out to see her coffin and say a personal goodbye before the funeral on Monday. The state burial is the first since the death of the former Prime Minister Winston Churchill. Royalty and heads of state from Japan's Emperor Naruhito and King Philip V of Spain to US President Joe Biden, French President Emmanuel Macron, and the Prime Ministers of Canada, Australia and New Zealand are expected to be among the 2,000 people attending the private burial at Windsor Castle. With an event of such magnitude, however, British Police Force said it'll be the biggest security operation it has ever taken and that they're faced with an immense security challenge.
And now for more world news, let's follow this report.
Firefighters and other emergency services intervened to evacuate residents and find those missing after violent thunderstorms hit central Italy overnight, flooding streets, homes, and causing the death of at least 7 people. Local authorities indicated that the search and operation will continue in the area with hope of finding new survivors.
Argentina's Vice President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner made her first public appearance in Buenos Aires on Thursday, nearly 2 weeks after a failed assassination attempt.
Yo entiendo que recuperar la democracia fue recuperar la vida.
I understand that recovering democracy was recovering life and the rationality. Being able to discuss politics, Peronists, Alfonsists, new Peronists, traditional Peronists, what democracy was from 1983 onwards, eradicating that violence. And the truth is that what happened the other day was something else. It was a rupture from what we urgently need to build again.
Una ruptura de eso que tenemos que volver a reconstruir urgentemente.
On September 15, João Lourenço pledged for a second mandate. The ceremony, which took place in the Angolan capital, was accompanied by a military parade in presence of several high representatives from different countries. Lourenço promises to develop the country's economy after the severe crisis that hit Angola in the last few years.
I, João Manuel Gonçalves Lourenço, in acceding to the office of President of the Republic, I swear on my honor to dedicate myself to the function with which I am invested.
South Korean leader once again expressed his hopes Wednesday to hold a face-to-face meeting with his Chinese counterpart. Yoon said he was looking forward to seeing Xi in person to discuss ways to develop relations between South Korea and China for the next 30 years on the occasions of the 13th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties between the two nations.
The president of Chile, Gabriel Boric, refused this Thursday to receive the Zionist ambassador credentials at the Palacio de la Moneda. The president refused the visit after being informed of the murder of a Palestinian teenager in an operation by the Zionist army. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador performed the traditional Grito de Independencia, or Cry of Independence ceremony from the balcony of the National Palace to commemorate 211th anniversary of Mexico's independence in front of thousands at the Zocalo in Mexico City, who joined the president with chants of Viva Mexico. Since the Tadjogate volcano erupted on September 19, 2021, travel interest to La Palma, one of the Canary Islands' least visited islands, has increased. Sofiane Kantouri reports for us.
Interest in visiting La Palma has increased dramatically since the volcano erupted on September 19, 2021, sending rivers of molten rock and lush plumes into the air. Off the northwest coast of Africa, the island is typically one of Spain's tourism-dependent Canary Islands that receives the least amount of visitors.
Pues ahora ya estamos aquí llegando al
We're already at the volcano, about 200 meters or so from the crater of the Tadjogate volcano.
del Tajogaite.
Es una experiencia diferente.
It's a totally different experience. It's like walking around a new planet called Isla Bonita.
Isla Bonita.
The island's average hotel occupancy rate in August was 19.9%, exceeding expectations, with most of overnight stays coming from travelers from the rest of Spain.
Es totalmente distinta ahora.
It's completely different now. It was already full of ash before, but now there is a 1 meter layer and a spike of new ash. It's all black.
Está totalmente cubierta.
Ha sido una cosa brutal.
It is quite brutal to see the changes that this volcano has made here. It's impressive.
Aquí in situ es impresionante.
Y News reports during the 85-day eruption highlighted the small island's charm in addition to the devastation caused by the volcano. The image broadcast around the world during that time helped whet travelers' appetites. La Palma is also known as La Isla Bonita, or Beautiful Island. It's a biosphere reserve recognized by UNESCO that is home to lush forests, rocky peaks, and desert.
And we finish with the tennis legend, the Swiss Roger Federer, who announced that he will retire next week at the age of 41 after the Laver Cup in London, marking the end of one of the greatest ever sporting careers. Roger Federer has won 20 major tournaments and has the record with 237 consecutive weeks spent at number one as the top in the ranking of tennis players in the world.
I am 41 years old. I've played more than 1,500 matches over 24 years. Tennis has treated me more generously than I ever would have dreamt, and now I must recognize when it is time to end my competitive career. The Laver Cup next week in London will be my final ATP event.
And on to a reminder of our top stories. As part of the Algerian preparation for the Arab Summit, Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune continues the series of invitations for Arab leaders for the summit. Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi says US sanctions on his country must be lifted to reach a nuclear agreement. Also in our news, Ukrainian authorities find a mass grave in Izium, a recaptured city in the east, where more than 440 bodies were found. And Kyrgyzstan's border guard service says that Tajik forces once again opened fire on several of its outposts. Well, that's it for today's World News. For more news stories, don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. Thank you for watching and goodbye.